Despite the Department of Transport's efforts to increase road safety during the festive season, people are still dying on the country's roads. Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula has reported that about 690 people have died on South African roads since the start of the festive season. Mbalula added that 3 provinces, the Eastern Cape, Limpopo and Mpumalanga, recorded an increase in the number of fatalities compared to the same period last year. Joining us for reaction on the latest data is Layton Beard from the Automobile Association of South Africa. Mr. Beard, thank you very much for your time here on ENCA. Now, the Transport Minister says he wants to reduce the number of road deaths by 20% compared to our last festive season. Do you think this is possible?
I don't, given the current framework in which we are operating, Masego, I don't think it is possible. And I think the broader framework that we are looking at is a 50 by 30, which is reducing by half a number of fatalities by 2030. And I think even the Minister acknowledged himself today that achieving that 20% decline would be difficult. I think the decline that we've seen at the moment was to be expected. We are seeing fewer cars on the road. The Minister mentioned a marginal decline in the traffic volumes. I think what we'd like to see is exactly by how much those traffic volumes have decreased, especially given the fact that our school holidays began much later than they did in 2020 than they did in 2019. And obviously there's also a restriction on travelling, given that many people have cancelled holidays because of various reasons, which we are aware of. So I think the reduction to 690 was to be expected. I think what is a little bit concerning is the fact that the reduction hasn't been higher than 690. I think 690 is still a very large number of fatalities. And for us, this is obviously a concern and remains a concern and has been a concern for a number of years.
Now, KZN and Gauteng are always among the provinces that lead in terms of fatalities during festive season and even Easter. And they lead again right now. But the minister says that these provinces have shown a decline, while other provinces such as Mpumalanga are showing significant increases. What can we attribute this to? Is it perhaps the fact that people can't move around as much because of COVID-19?
Yes, I think certainly Masego movement has been restricted. I think there's a lot of people who may have reviewed their holiday plans, may have changed them later in the year, may have decided not to go on holiday at all. I think we can't underestimate the impact of COVID-19 and coronavirus on people's plans going forward. Even now, I think people are making different plans for 2021 than they had originally envisaged, maybe even in September or later on. So I do think that the virus has had an impact on traffic volumes. I do think it's had an impact on where and when people are going to be travelling and when. And I think that's reflected somewhat in the numbers that we are seeing. I think that we always expected the fatality figures for 2020 to be significantly down on 2019, not over this period, but throughout the year, given the fact that fewer cars were on the road. And I think it stands to reason that if you have fewer cars on the road, you're going to have fewer crashes and therefore fewer fatalities.
I'm going to move a little bit away from the fatalities that we record every year in South Africa and talk about the flouting of COVID-19 regulations by taxi operators, 70% capacity not being followed. What kind of conversations should the government be having with taxi associations about this?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer because I don't really play in that space. I think what I would say in terms of those regulations is something that I would say in terms of the application of all regulations, and that is that where there is a flouting of a regulation or a law, traffic law enforcement and perhaps even police enforcement need to be involved. And in terms of the conversation that needs to be held, that should focus on you need to obey the rules of the road. You need to obey the regulations that are set. Otherwise, you are not going to be allowed to travel on that road. And I think that's the conversation, certainly from a road safety point of view, that the AA would want to see happen. Anybody who is not following the rules of the road needs to be dealt with harshly. And this is something that I think Masego speaks generally to the whole conversation of road safety, and not only to this issue of COVID as well. But we have laws that are existing. Many of those laws are excellent laws. We need to apply those laws, and they need to be implemented by traffic law enforcement officers. We've said this before, and I'll say it again, we need definitely double the amount of traffic law enforcers that we currently have. But there are laws, and those laws need to be followed. If there are regulations, they need to be followed. And if they aren't, they obviously need to be pointed out to the offenders, and if those offenders need to be punished, then they need to be punished.
Well, many thanks, Layton Beard from the Automobile Association of South Africa.